Alright guys, so this one's going to be a little different. I needed a break from trying to get the Intel drivers to work for RPCS 3, and I just wanted to play some games. So this is going to be a little different. Instead, we're going to be using an eGPU. I will make sure that in the title for each video, where the eGPU is used, it will say eGPU, because I don't want people thinking like, oh, I'm, trying to hide the fact that I'm using an eGPU to get better performance and say it's on the Intel driver or anything like that. I don't want it to be confusing. So it will specifically say in the title, in parentheses or something, eGPU. So this is what we'll be using. It's a 1650. I think that's a pretty good partner to the i5. It's not, especially when we're only able to run 1280 by 800 unless you're using like an external display. I think it's a good partner, and it kind of gives me that Nintendo Switch vibe where you're kind of docking it to get better performance, except, on steroids, compared to the Switch, which only gives you, moderate performance. This is going to be pretty heavy, and I wanted to show you guys that, RPCS 3 is heavily CPU bound. There's not much you can do about that. It's emulation in general. You need a good CPU. And the i5 is a very strong CPU, but we're heavily limited by those threads. And there's not much we can do about that with the WinMax, right? But adding a eGPU like this does give us quite a big performance boost. So I'm going to go through all of RPCS 3, all the games I have in my library, and do a separate eGPU video to show you the benefits of it. And one of these you can get fairly cheap. I think I spent $250 for it used on eBay. It's a pretty low-end graphics card. It's not that great. But for our purposes, with the WinMax, it's perfect. So I will go through the settings like I normally do with RPCS 3, and all that good stuff, but I just kind of wanted to point this out. This will be a separate video series, but I wanted to do it because I needed a break from dealing with Intel's drivers all day. So, with that out of the way, there is another quick thing I want to show you guys. You may have seen it in my other videos. I just haven't talked about it because I was still trying to figure out the most stable settings, but it's throttle stop. This is something I highly recommend. You won't see a huge performance gain from using this, but what you will get is stability in terms of RPCS 3 not crashing as much, or thread locking as much. It still will, but this definitely helps. So if we click on this here, I have all these settings changed. Make sure to leave it in adaptive mode. If you turn it to static, you're going to lock your computer up. But basically, for anything relating directly to the CPU, you want to do a negative 60 millivolts. So over here, you dial it in. And then for the GPU, the iGPU, you want to do negative 90 millivolts. And again, this is actually something I found on Reddit. Somebody suggested these settings. I tried it and was surprised at the performance. I was expecting more crashes. Over here, you want to change this to 15. 14 is the default. You want to change that to 15. And then for all of this, I put it at 37. Now, I'm not sure if that actually works or not. As you can see over here, it says 33, 33, 36, and 37. Now, that's your turbo boost. So if you have one core active, it's 37, two cores, 36, so on. I don't know if that actually changes anything. It actually does let you change these values. Usually if something doesn't work for our processor, this will be locked. So I don't know. I changed it. Not 100% sure it changed it or not. But yeah, so you can see these temperatures after doing about an hour of RPC S3 tests after the newest update. I'll show you guys the new settings, but after the newest update, every single game on my list I had to retest and tweak the settings. And yeah, I just kind of needed a break, and I thought I'd finally bust out the EGPU and do some benchmarking and tests. So for the eGPU, we can turn this back to auto. You want this on mega. You can leave these three, and you want your normal LLVM recompiling. And this is for Dante's Inferno. Probably should have started with that, right? Because we're using an eGPU, I'm going to bump it up to 1080p. Stretch to display area. Now this is one of the new settings, asynchronous texture streaming. Now if you read here, what it does, pretty nice, right? Make sure if you are using the iGPU to turn that off. I was doing some testing after this update came out, and it set that to on for all of my games, and they were all crashing and having lockups, and I couldn't figure out why. And so I looked into the settings, and I found that little nugget hidden in there, and I was like, well, that's good to know. So make sure after you update to the latest build, you turn that off if you're using the iGPU, or you are not going to have a great time. Now, I turned the frame limit off for Dante's Inferno with no VSync. And this is something I'm going to try out here. I actually have the NVIDIA settings to limit to 60. So we'll see if that works. For audio, the normal buffer, 100 milliseconds. Now this is another one of the new settings right here. If you're using the iGPU, you're going to want to use host mode. If you use device, which relies on your drivers, let's see. Yeah, if you read there at the bottom, it says host or device uses your drivers. Well, I'm sure you guys have noticed Intel's drivers are passable, I guess is the nice way of saying it. They're passable. So do not, under any circumstance, use host or driver or device. God, I cannot talk today, guys. Don't use device if you're using the iGPU. Again, since I'm using an eGPU, I'm going to try it out with that. And that got turned off during my testing. And we'll leave this. I think you could probably even, since we're using an eGPU, drop that to 200 and be okay. Lower is always better for the record with this. This is something you're going to have to play with the iGPU a lot, and it's heavily dependent on the game you're playing. I found some games I can have it set to 100, and others I've had it as high as 800. In fact, Dante's Inferno, on a previous build, I had to have it at 1,000 just to avoid hard crashing. Again, this is heavily dependent on the game, and it's dependent on your drivers. Moving through here, usual texture scaling. I really like using this option. It's nice because it offloads some of the work from our processor to the GPU, and even with the iGPU, it's very nice. Anything we can do to take some of that work off the processor is welcome, because we don't have a lot of threads to work with. The rule of thumb with emulation for a long time now has been you need double the performance of the original device to emulate it. And that's changed quite a bit over the years, but it does hold true, especially with RPCS 3. So the original PS3 had 8 cores, so ideally we should have 8 cores, 16 threads to get perfect emulation. It can be done with less, but so this is something else I've been messing with, is this debug console mode. I didn't actually know what it did, or I actually didn't even notice it, but basically it allows the system to have a little bit more memory, because the PS3 had more memory than you were allowed access to in dev mode for games. Now, it says here it causes some software to behave differently than on retail hardware. It does sometimes help and it sometimes hurts, but I'm just curious what it'll do. So let's see here. I'm probably going to stop testing Dante's Inferno on the iGPU for a while, because this game is just not playable anymore. It's just not. It has too many hard crashes. I'm worried about actually damaging my computer from all the crashes I've gotten. So, until something changes, it's gonna come down to Intel. Probably not gonna be testing Dante's Inferno too much more, unless I'm using an EGPU. So we're running at 1080p. This is crazy. I really wish my, I bought an HDMI capture card. I bought an HDMI capture card so I could show you guys just how nice this really looks, because wah wah. But I wanted to show you guys how nice this really does come through, even at, you know, with God of War 3, 75% resolution scale. It really does look good on this little screen. And 1080p on here looks even better. Oh, man. But something else I wanted to point out here is the audio quality. Oh no. I think we crashed, guys. Oh. That was weird. That's the other nice thing about the eGPU, is I sometimes have crashes like that, but it's recoverable. Sorry, it's really hard to see where I'm jumping through the phone screen. But yeah, even if it does lock up like that on the eGPU, I've actually had to do that a few times, it will recover, whereas the iGPU just can't. And this isn't to, you know, I'm not going to do these videos simply to bash on Intel or its drivers. It's pretty amazing what the iGPU can do. And, you know, I say that all the time. I'm just impressed to see God of War 3 boot at all. Let alone with reasonable enough frame rates to get as far as I have. But back to what I was saying, the audio in Dante's Inferno is basically perfect. So I'm just going to let you guys listen to this while I am in combat, compared to my last video, so you guys can hear the difference. So you guys hear that? There's no stopping in the audio, no stuttering, no skipping. It's just nice, clear audio. And after doing a lot of research, it seems like Intel's HD audio drivers, which are part of their graphics drivers, aren't great. I've actually experienced issues with it in other emulators, and I assumed it was, something else, like Realtek's drivers. Realtek's, I think that's their name. I thought, maybe it was their drivers or something, but Intel's HD audio drivers, apparently, after doing quite a bit of research, aren't great either. And that's kind of why we get the weird popping and stuttering a lot in these games. So it's unfortunate, again, with the iGPU here. But I kind of wanted to do a series of videos with the eGPU to show you guys that even though we are limited by the number of threads in the processor we have, just buying a little eGPU, the 1650 is probably the best pairing, or something in that range if you'd prefer an AMD card. 4 gigs is going to be more than enough. In fact, let me see here. Let's see how much RAM we're actually using, or video memory. Yeah, look at this. That's it. I mean, we could probably push this even higher than what's being used. It's crazy. This poor little processor. But yeah, we could push this significantly higher. And I really think, unfortunately, with just the limitations of the device and Intel's lackluster Vulkan drivers, this might be the best bet, is to buy an eGPU if you want to stick with the WinMax over getting the Win 3. And also consider the fact that if you buy an eGPU, down the road, let's say you get a Win 3, a Win 4, whatever's coming out next, provided it still has Thunderbolt, you'll still be able to use that eGPU when you want more performance. Or if you decide to build your own computer one day. So that's kind of why I ended up doing it, because I'm like, in the long run, I've got a GPU already if I decide to build a computer, or if I do buy another GPD Win device, it will most likely have Thunderbolt 3 unless they switch to AMD. So either way, it doesn't hurt anything to have it. And I mean, just the performance in this emulator alone is amazing with an eGPU. I'll show you guys more games. I just wanted to do Dante's Inferno first because, frankly, this has been the most frustrating game to try and get working between the audio and the hard crashes and thread locks, which completely disappear, by the way. I have not had a single thread lock in my testing with the eGPU. So that is completely just because of using the iGPU for this. See, and we'll get these occasional lockups, and I'm not sure what causes that, but as soon as you do that, and then go back to full screen, it's fine. So that's something I'm gonna have to keep investigating, but yeah, as you can see, I mean, the performance is great. We're running at 1080p versus 720. And as soon as I get the HDMI capture card to show you just how... I can't wait to show you guys just how well this runs and looks. But thanks for watching, and I will have a lot more videos for you guys. Have a good day.